All right, welcome everybody to the FightFit Podcast. Sammy Greco, mate, so much going on for you at the moment.
Yeah, there's a hell of a lot going on at the moment.
Yeah, you're a busy man. First of all, thank you so much for coming in, mate.
Thank you very much.
The fact that you've had health complications recently,
yeah,
I'm sure that there'll be many people wanting to hear an update from you as to how that's going, first of all. So how are you doing?
Well, first of all, I'm here at this podcast interview, so things are going well. Yeah, look, it's been the last 18 months that been a bit harsh and complicated for me. March last year, I suffered a heart attack. Little did I know I had a 99% closure in one of my arteries. Had that fixed with a stent. 15 months later, had a re-blockage of that stent, which was quite harsh. Took me back into hospital. They ballooned that back open. And they ran some other further tests on some other arteries, and they found significant closures, which could possibly cause me some complications down the track. And they weren't going to risk putting any more stents in. And purely, I've got a history in the family with Dad. 20 years ago, Dad had some stents put in, ended up having 5 bypasses at the end of it, his body just didn't agree with the stents, and I wasn't any different. So I ended up having a triple bypass 7.5 weeks ago.
Wow. Mate, the fact that you're here and you look very well.
Yeah, thank you.
That's just awesome, and I'm so glad that you are here, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what we'd do without you, because especially your fighters as well, those guys rely on you so much. Jimmy, Ben Sassoli, all those guys, you're such a massive part of their development at the moment. So
yeah, look, I'd like to think that I've been a sort of a major influence with my guys, and not just fighters, just athletes in general. I'm very supportive to them in many facets of life, not just in the fight game.
Right.
It's always beyond fight, life in general. I'm constantly, constantly in their ear, trying to help people, develop as better human beings more than anything else.
It's an amazing part of the coach and sort of student relationship in a way, because you do see examples out there of sort of coaches who are more interested in their own sort of interests, and maybe neglect a little bit the actual fighters, what they want, who they are as a person, how to develop them as an individual, as a unique fighter, and all that. So
yeah, 100%. I couldn't. You've hit the nail on the head. One of the things that I profess and I always talk about is developing the individual for life in general. Fighting is just a minute part of it. With me, it's I want my students to be better than me. There's coaches out there that live their life through their students' eyes. You can't do that. You make so many mistakes. You've got to deal with what you've got and work with what you've got. So I just want to better these individuals.
Sorry, I'm missing a phone call there.
No, I don't know.
That's all right.
And let me just turn that off.
Yeah, no worries.
There's another one, my boy. There's just taking him over to Japan soon.
No worries. And I was going to say as well, you've got the I'm a Fighter campaign. It's a really interesting concept there, and you do a lot of motivational speaking. So I'm really keen, and I think there'll be a lot of people who are interested to know about the premise of that. Yeah,
look, basically what I was just saying before, and it leads into the I'm a Fighter campaign. And the reason why I started the I'm a Fighter campaign, a lot of people say, look, it stands to reason, you're a fighter, you punch, you kick. It's got really nothing to do with that. It's more about, I love the association with the word fighter, because for me, being a fighter means not giving up. It means fighting against adversities, fighting harder when the chips are down, and so on. The life that we live in general is a roller coaster. Being a fighter is even a super, super roller coaster. So there's a lot of guys, physically, they feel fantastic, but it's the emotional, psychological side is where they break down. And that's what my I'm a Fighter campaign is about. It's about getting hold of these guys and building resilience through their training, and through life. The thing that I've done, and I think I've done it well, is all my hard training, even though it was a physical thing, I've brought it into my everyday life. The lessons I've learned, the tribes and tribulations that I've gone through.
And I guess you'd have to be really embodying that at the moment as well.
It is. I just went through, a triple bypass surgery. It was 4.5 hour surgery. I could have easily just been mentally weak before and after, but I chose not to. I knew that I was going to get through it, and I believed in what I did. And that's, believing in yourself is half of the battle. Believing that you will be okay. and so on. But taking the right measures also, you know.
What are the main things that you'd say that you try and like instill in your fighters that you think will be good tools for life?
Look, one of the things I always say is I always look at myself in the mirror and say, okay, what are my strengths and weaknesses? My strengths are there. There's no reason to really work on those. I can touch on those, but there's no really reason to work on those. Let's complete me as an individual. And one of the things that I find in today's world, and I'm going through with a few fighters at the moment, physically they're the strongest guys out there. But emotionally, self-belief is a key element. And behind closed doors, structurally someone might look fit and strong to you here, but behind closed doors, you just don't know. It's unable to capture those guys mentally. Through all my training, whether I'm training, whether we're training or whether we're on fight day, whatever it may be, I still, till this very day, embed those positive and I reinforce things all the time. I keep resurfacing it because I want them to understand that their biggest enemy is themselves if they allow it to be. And that's what you don't want. The hardest guy you'll find to fight is yourself. For those who understand what I'm talking about. So, it's about having that self-belief, about believing that you can do it.
Right.
Not cannot do it.
I think self-belief is something that's so incredibly hard to come by, and it's very much something that you build up over time, and to know that you're really working on building that from the inside out with your fighters is quite inspirational.
It doesn't come overnight. It comes with, weeks and months and years. Years of training. It doesn't come just overnight. You don't automatically become smarter. You don't automatically become stronger. It's a progression. Slowly, and you've got to be willing to ride it out. And it's not going to always be, glitz and glamour. There's going to be some times where it's just dark and doom and everything else, and you're prepared to weigh that through and just really see it through.
And you've been around for so long, mate. You would have seen pretty much everything there is to see in this sport. There must have been times where you've had to really either put on the brakes with, say like a training day, where you've seen the telltale signs of somebody who's maybe mentally fatigued and maybe had to put the brakes on a little bit in that regard. How good are you now at really reading those signs?
I'm really good. I don't have, 100 fighters under me. I have a small group. And the reason why I have a small group, because I treat it as a family and I've got to know every individual, more so emotionally and psychologically more so than physically. Like I said to you, everyone can brush up to be physically strong and look tough and everything else, but are they really inside? And I have a great connection with my guys that I can literally pick them off straight away, and they're like, how'd you know that? I've had guys, a simple example is this. Guys have come in, to training, and they are get up to training, and I'll look at them and there's just this look on their face. They just look dull and tired, and I say, you right? Have you slept overnight? Did you sleep well overnight? And they're like, yeah, look, I slept a bit restless, didn't really eat well last night and so on, but I don't really feel well. My theory in life is this, even though we say the worst workout you can do is the one you don't do, when it comes to things like this, the sport is so dangerous. The fight game is so dangerous. And I want you to be at your best every single time you walk in. And I'm going to ask for the best, and that's the best way to learn. So I've had guys come in and just, not give me what I want. And halfway through their session, I say, look, pack your bags and off you go. Go home. I want you to go out and rest. And they're like, oh, no, because there's this whole guilt factor.
Pride as well.
Basically do it from a psychological aspect. The next time they come training, they're full blown right into it. They've had time to think about what's happened. They've had time to, absorb exactly what I've just finished telling them, and they come back refreshed. And that's the type of guys that I want.
I find that so interesting, like just little details like that of ways in which different coaches go about making fighters the best that they can be, because every fighter habituates in different ways and every fighter who's achieved greatness would have achieved it in different ways, but everybody has greatness behind them in order to become great as well. What if you had to look at a guy like Jimmy Crute that you've been training for a while now, what are the signs that you see in him that he has something special?
I think he has an enormous courage, and I think it can be really overpowering, could be dangerous to him too. it's a brilliant thing that he does have. I use the term, having balls and having the word, the CUNT in you, but you can't buy that. You've either got it or you haven't. And for those that have got it, sometimes it hasn't been found and you've got to go and find it. And all of a sudden you see this guy just resurface to something bigger and better. Jimmy's always had it from the start. But to counter that, he didn't have, what's the word? He had that, but he just used to throw everything at you. He didn't have that control until time, went through, and I just worked with him. And I used to say to him all the time, I said, don't worry about your brute strength. Don't worry about your courage. Don't worry about everything. Let's worry about great technique. Let's be sharp mentally and physically. This is, your mind and the strength of your mind will always drive you to the finish line. Physically alone, you might get there, you might get close, but you will break down. But it's that mental fortitude that's going to take you to that next step, just over the finish line.
That's such a fascinating point about Jim, because obviously something that I'm very passionate about is Aussie fighters doing well on the world stage. Love to see it. I follow it with a fine-tooth comb. And I've been following Jim for a while, and I noticed that on his Contender Series fight, he had a lot of nervous energy that he brought into that fight. But I think he managed to get over the line in that fight. But then you can see it in his fights since, how it's slowly become better and better. And now I feel like if he sort of gets that in check, that nervous energy as he matures as a fighter, the sky's the limit for him. He's 23 and it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, look, people, in general, people underestimate nervous energy. People underestimate large crowds and everything else. It's got to be part of your training. I say this to all my guys, including Jimmy. I talked to him the other day about it, how important visualization is, how important meditation is.
When you say visualization, I think there is, like when I see that, I see like somebody sitting in the room beforehand just visualizing exactly the steps of how they're going to win the fight or how things are going to unfold. How do you interpret visualization?
Well, I'd say you're partly right. And when people visualize, they tend... For those who aren't sure how to visualise properly, they tend to visualise only them winning, so to speak. But the truth of the matter is, visualise a fight. Visualise a fight when you are on top, techniques that you want to do, making them miss, making them pay, and so on. It's not about you just going, go, go, go. And all of a sudden, then there's that trade-off where you feel you're on the back foot. That's part of visualisation also. If you get knocked down, I've done it so many times. I've done it over and over again. And through visualisation, I've won fights over 100 times before I stepped in the ring. But had I not done it, it would have been a different story. I can't tell you the amount of strength mentally I gained, more so than physically, out of visualisation. The whole thing is believing. You really have to believe, and it comes with all the hard work. When you look back at all the hard work, you can turn around, and say, I know my opponent hasn't done what I've done. There is no reason on the face of this earth that I should get beaten today. The only person that could beat me today is me. And that's the truth. By not completing your task.
Wow. You
got a coach there for a reason. Paul Pfeiffer was a classic example, the great Paul Pfeiffer, being my coach. I learned so much off him. Here's a guy where his belief in his fighters was unbelievable. Through the good or the bad, he was always there. And the guy didn't even have to scream from the corner. Fighting in front of 80 to 100,000 people, they're chanting away. I could still hear him because I had that connection with him.
When he does scream from the corner, you hear it.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's piercing. And it can be painful at times, but there's a reason why he does it. And he wants the best for you. And Paul, I'm probably a reflection of Paul, to a certain degree. That I try to embed in my fighters, that positivity, that visualization. You've got to see it. If you can't see it, you can't achieve it. And people say, look, I thought about the fight. I had a dream about the fight last night. I think of it, but shit, I've got to admit, I got knocked down. I said, and what did you do? You fucking get back up. You fight on. You've got to have dog in you. You really do. It's you or me. You're not going out to lunch with your opponent. It's a physical fight. It's dog eat dog out there.
Absolutely, and it's so cool, the lineage of when you think about it, to Jimmy, yourself, Paul Fifield, and this is something that's Paul's still with us today, and he's still bloody the best shape out of anyone.
I think he'll always be. That's the thing with Paul.
But he's like the maestro, you know, and it just is. So it's almost beautiful how it gets passed down from generation to generation, and now we're seeing it manifest through your boys. And it must be something that you're incredibly proud of, and that you look to Paul as such an important person in your life as well. I'm
going to be honest with you. I had an amazing relationship with Paul, inside fighting and outside fighting. He's such an intelligent and intellectual person. A lot of people don't see that. But when you get sitting with Paul and talking to him, you could talk about anything. That's the beautiful thing about it. He's a guy that could take your mind off the fight, and he's a guy who can put your mind back into the fight. And his rules were quite simple. You know, he did an amazing thing for me when I first won my 1999 world title. And this is why I absolutely adore the guy. 3 weeks before the fight, I was training in Melbourne. I was fighting Mike Bernardo from South Africa,
right,
over in Japan, over in '99. And I remember when we accepted the fight, it was all guns blazing. Let's go, you know. And I was going full steam ahead. Training was extremely hard, sparring with a lot of guys like Tosk and a few of the other big heavyweights, relentless bastards they were, you know. But they're the type of guys that made me who I am today too. And
it was an amazing crop you guys
had.
Yeah,
it was. It was hardcore. It was hardcore. I honestly think we probably couldn't transition that hardcore in today because of politics and everything else.
This is the politically correct culture now.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And things were done differently then, but they got the job done. And
I love this podcast. These stories, please carry on.
Yeah, and you know, 3 weeks before the fight, you know, I got some really sad or bad news that back in '99 that my dad had to undergo a quintuple bypass. Now, here I am getting ready for a fight. Fight of my life. But guess what? He's got a bigger fight of his life ahead of him. And I remember talking to Paul at that time. And as my dad would say, family first. And Paul was, you know, he didn't even blink. He said, mate, go look after your family. And the truth of the matter is, and which he did bring up too, he goes, mate, we can fight for a world title anytime. You got one dad, you know? So I remember going to visit Dad pretty much a day before his operation, and my dad was so stubborn-headed, even though he came late into my sport, because typical WOG mentality, your sport's not going to make you money, what are you doing? You know, come and work with me. And we're both motor mechanics by trade.
Right.
He says, you know, all this is business is yours, but I just didn't want it. I just love my sport. And he didn't believe it until the later years, you know. And I remember seeing him the day before, and the first thing he said to me as soon as I walked in the hospital, he goes, what are you doing here? And I said, what do you mean, what am I doing here? And he says, how's your training going? I said, it's not, Dad. I said, it's off the tables. I'm not doing it. I said, I've spoken to Paul and everything. He goes, no, please, son. He goes, I know that you've always wanted this. Please do it for me. And I said, Dad, let's look after you first. If all goes well, then I can get up and go, you know, but I can't do it right now. And that conversation finished, and the next day and the morning of his operation, I went to see him, and he asked me exactly the same thing as if he didn't ask me the day before. You know, so he's obviously tested me, and I said exactly the same thing. And he said, son, he says, do me a favour. He says, I want you to go and get what you really, really want and really deserve. I know you've worked hard. He goes, I probably don't appreciate what you do, but he goes, I know you've worked hard. He goes, I'll be fine. He goes, I'll see you on the other side. A few of those words tore me apart, you know.
I can imagine.
Yeah, you know, and then seeing a priest walk in at the same time, I didn't know. I said, Mum, what's the priest doing
What's he doing here?
Yeah, well, priest walks in and basically gives them a blessing.
Right.
If anything untoward's happened and so on. I mean, at that particular time, my insides were just fucking
I can imagine.
churning and everything else. I just wanted to punch a priest in the face, but little did I know. But he goes into the operation, you know, and we sat back and just waited, and his operation was 4 hours plus also, 20 years ago. And
that would have been a long 4 hours.
Yeah, it was as long as 4 hours of my life, but and intense and nail biting. And then I saw him straight after the operation, which was a couple of hours in ICU, a couple of hours after he got into ICU, and he looked like death warmed up. He was just blown out. He had tubes through his neck and through his mouth, down his throat, through his stomach, cuts through his arm and middle of his chest and everything else. But it looked like death warmed up, and it really, at that particular time, really made me reevaluate life and the purpose of our existence and why we do things and why we don't do things. You know, it really did. It really set in like crazy, you know. And at that particular time, I was looking at him and I said to one of the nurses, I said, will he be okay? And he goes, yeah, when he comes to, because he was in ICU, he was in like an induced coma, and then they take you out of that, put you like in a coma form, but wait for you to breathe, start breathing, and then they can pull the pipes out. Otherwise, they'll leave you back in there. And it was just like, is he going to wake up or isn't he? Is he going to wake up or isn't he? Now, I'm not medically minded, so my trust at that particular time was in their hands. And it was the worst feeling ever. The anticipation, the waiting game. It was the fucking longest time of my life. And I remember when he did come to, the first thing he did, he wanted to pull the pipes out of his mouth. And they stopped him from doing it. Eventually they ran a little bit of water down just to lubricate the area, and they finally come out. And he started breathing on his own. It was funny, my dad, at that particular time, he's not a religious man. He believed in God, but never a religious man. The first thing he said once he knew what was happening, he goes, thank God. And I looked at him, I literally laughed. I thought, you prick, call on him when needed, Anyway, as the days went on, a couple of days went on, we got in conversation again, and he said, how's it all going, Sam? And I said, Dad, I spoke to you before, if you remember. And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, it's not. Within 4 or 5 days after his operation, he said to me, can you do me a favour for me? He goes, can you take this fight? Can you just go? Because I hadn't spoken to the Japanese yet, told them it was off. I was biding the time, but I wasn't going to tell him. And then all of a sudden he goes, mate, can you please do it for me? That's all I want you to do. So I rang Paul. He asked me how Dad was. And I said, look, he's in good spirits. He's everything else. I said, but Paul, he wants us to go. And he goes, you sure? And I said, yeah. He says, well, if that's the case, let's just do it, And off we went, We got to Japan. I think we were there 10 days pre the fight or something. And, everything was going really good because I was fit anyway. Everything was going really well, apart from my dad being ill at the time and recovering, sorry. And it was pretty good talking to him on the phone, but not face to face. So that sort of kept my spirits up high. And I knew I had to do something for him.
Still be playing on your mind, obviously.
Yeah. And Paul was really good, really comforting. He's a great guy to have around. He's a great role model and everything else. And he's such a solid, I call him the rock, He's such a solid rock when things come like this because, as you know, through himself, his family's first. He doesn't really give a shit about anything else, And my instructions for that fight were quite simple, Don't mix any more than 3 or 4 punches with him, stick a move, you're a lot faster than what is and so on. And I remember the day of the fight, those instructions were given to me yet again. And, I'm going to explain to you how important coaches are. Not just coaches, and I'm talking about the coach, And that's why I admire him so much. On the day of the fight, he gives me the instructions again. We went through the whole ordeal. I was doing a lot of visualizations too and so on. And again, he lays out the rules and out I go, And it was 70-odd thousand people there. I'll never forget. It was just massive. And it's the fight of my life now. Here I go. And he gives me my instructions again in there. And out I went. The bell went. And there's this fierce monster on the other side, breathing fire, just wants to rip your head off. So we're going to war. That's exactly what we're doing. And Paul's voice is so delicate at times, but yet so powerful. And I'd get out there and I was sticking and moving on this guy. And all of a sudden, within, I think, a couple of minutes into the round, I got a good exchange on him. So I got that 1, 2, I got 3. As I went to throw that 4th punch, he clouts me with a right hook, hits me straight in the jaw, knocks me flat on my back. Absolutely fucking it. I wasn't out, but I was down.
Close to it.
And I felt like I was just a block of lead on the ground. And I'm peeling my head off the ground, but I couldn't get my body off the ground. And I sort of looked up and I was listening to everyone through muffled ears. Sounds like everyone was underwater. It's really weird. It's really fucking weird the way it is, yeah? And I looked up and there was a silhouette of a guy going, 2. 3 was because the light was beaming in the back of the thing. I remember it vividly. And through all this at one particular time, I hear, fucking get up, Sam. Get up was Paul. And I managed to get on my knee at 7, stand up, and I was like a flag on a windy day. It was whacked. And the referee turns around and looks at me and says, are you okay, Sam? Now, I don't know any fighter to this very day to say, no, ref, I'm not. I'm going to go home. I'm hurt. Of course I'm going to say yes. So I said yes. And he says, well, fight. And then Mike Bernardo just comes storming straight at me. I threw a punch. I went to throw a kick. I slipped over because my legs were like fucking jelly. And I ended up getting back up. We exchanged a couple more and the bell went. And I'll tell you how stuffed I was at that particular time. Paul was waiting for him in his corner, in our corner. I went to a neutral corner. Mike went to his corner. Yeah, laugh. But the referee goes, no, you're going over there. And I thought, oh, fuck, here we go. So I got back to the corner. Paul started talking to me, and he reckons I was like for the first 20 seconds, I was like a blank canvas. He was talking a blank canvas until I finally snapped. And he poured it hard on me. He says, mate, I asked you, what did I tell you to do? He goes, get out there and weather the storm for the second round. He goes, stick a move. Get those legs back, and that's what I want you to do. And this is a smart operator. He didn't tell me exchange with him. He said, get those legs back, because he knew I was going to be faster and quicker. And we'll worry about it in the third round. That's how confident he was. And that's exactly what I did. I came back after the second round. He says, how are you feeling? I said, not bad. Yeah, my legs are coming back. And he says, Sam, time to go to work now. And I think, shit, I've been working for the last 2 rounds. He goes, no, time to go to work. He goes, you got to pour it on him. You got to pour it on him at every cost. That's it. You've just got to do whatever you have to do now. Take it home for the next 3 rounds. And sure enough, I agreed and I said, let's go. And as you know, they called out seconds out. And as they called seconds out, I was just about to walk off, and Paul grabbed me by the arm at that particular time. And the fucker that he is, he knew exactly at the time to call it. And he called one of the biggest things that stick with me in my head for the rest of my life. He says, your dad's depending on this.
No.
And I cannot tell you how powerful those words were, you know, coming from a man that I absolutely admire and respect, you know, both Paul and my dad. And that's all he had to say. And it's just like he's just started this whole, this supercharged V8 engine he started inside me, and the fire started burning. My eyes started to roll, and I went out there like a man possessed. And I was tagging Mike Bernardo with triple jab right hands, back spitting kicks, kicking him everywhere, cutting him open everywhere. And at the end of the 5 rounds, I knew I had won it. Paul knew that I had won it before I even got my hands raised.
Wow.
And when I got my hands raised, I said, thank you, Dad, right? And it was so memorable. You're talking about how important coaches are. That's what I'm saying. There's a man who knew it. He didn't throw comments for the sake of throwing them. He knew when to throw them and when it's going to be the most powerful. And that's about knowing your fighter.
Wow.
What turns them on, what turns them off.
What a story.
Yeah, and so I really thank him for that, and obviously Dad too at the same time. But, you know, one of the greatest victories in my life was that. And it wasn't so much the belt. Honest to God, it wasn't so much the belt. It was the purpose of it and why I was doing it and how I did it. And that's why the I'm a Fighter campaign come about too, is that fighters are champions or world champions, whatever you want to call them, when they win a fight, yeah? But it's how you win it. You know, champions are, I think great champions are guys that throughout their career at times get knocked down. It's what you do when you get back up. I had the choice of staying down. I had the choice of lying out. Still getting paid the same, but I got too much pride.
Your dad was depending on you.
And my dad was depending on me.
Man,
and I had a coach I couldn't let down. You know, Paul's a no bullshit guy. If you're lazy and you fuck around, he'll tell you straight up. You know, and I'm not prepared to wear that. I prefer to give him everything because he gives me everything.
There are so many layers to that story that make it such an amazing story. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that about your old man as well.
Well, I can tell you one thing before you go ahead. That's the first time I'm telling you the story without shedding tears. I normally do, but I've had to cut little bits out. Yeah. Purely because I choke on it. I really, really do. Because that is one of the most emotional roller coasters I've ever been on in my whole entire life. Yeah. Well, you know? I can completely understand my old man passed away when I was 19 from a heart attack. So I completely understand where you're coming from. And I cannot tell that story. There's absolutely no way. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us. The coming of age of your old man sort of accepting you as a fighter and telling you to go and pursue your dream is as well, and to go and kick that goal is just such a cool story. And then the sort of the wisdom that Paul imparts on you in that one comment is just amazing. Paul had a way with words. You know, he wasn't one that was outspoken in terms of, you know, he just wouldn't shut up. Sometimes the best word said was the one unsaid. I had to look at him and that was it. And I knew what he wanted. And at times he'd have to tell me. But, you know, having said all that, would I be here Would I have won a world title without him? No. You know, you honestly, you have to, everyone out there, even for those people listening to this podcast, in order to appreciate being on top, you need to appreciate what it's fucking like being down here, man. And no one likes it. Not one person that I know to this very day likes being down the bottom. I don't care who you are. Yeah?
It's very
but
true.
Are you prepared to do the work to get up? Yeah. I don't mind failing in life. And I say this to all my guys. But I can't handle not fucking trying. That's a no-no. Yeah? If you fail and give it everything, I have no problem with that because we can go away and we can learn. But I can't accept you not trying.
Right.
Because not trying is already failure.
And I guess when you were on the canvas, when you'd been knocked down, that would have been like taking every little bit of strength
A fighter's instinct is to get back up. Right. Or it should be anyway, as far as I know.
Unless you've been to Sully's opponent.
Yeah, you understand exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, you shouldn't be there. You're not cut out for it. Go and dance. Go and play chess or something. You know, people say, you know, how do you relate what do you relate the fight game to? I relate the fight game to a game of chess. It's about me making you make a mistake and checkmate. It's an intelligent game. The average eye will look at it and think, oh, these are two pit bulls in a cage or two guys in a fight just trying to knock each other out. But it's not.
That's the thing
there's a science behind the game.
That's the most important about fighting. And that's the thing that I find the most fascinating. And when I get to talk to guys like yourself and, you know, I talked to Hammer the other day and guys like Nick Carra and Dave Hedgecock, all of these guys just have their own wisdom, and Paul Fifield, obviously, to give. And fighting is something that completely transcends just the act of physically fighting. There's so much more behind it. And everything that you've just said now is just an exemplification of the mental fortitude that it takes to become a fighter and all the obstacles and the getting back up. And I would really recommend everyone to go on Instagram and follow the I'm a Fighter campaign.
Yeah, I'm a Fighter campaign, or the Sam Greco.
Follow yourself
K1
as well.
Sam Greco, yeah. But one thing I got to say, and I've got to take my hat off to you guys too. I mean, there's a lot of people running promotions out there, but then you guys have got the Fight Fit Challenge. Now, you don't have the Fight Fit Challenge, and look, you don't have to be an Einstein to work this out, but the Fight Fit Challenge is not about creating a world champion fight. It's about creating a world champion person. Right? It's about taking people out of their comfort zone. And that's what I enjoy doing with my guys. For me to get the best out of you, Jake, I'm going to take you out of your comfort zone. You're either going to make it or you're not. But I'm going to guide you all the way. If you do fall, I will give you a hand the first time. The second time, I might even say, come on, get up. The third time, you're on your own. Let's go. You know, you're either going to do it or you're not. The fight game itself is too dangerous. And this is why I love the average, you know, Joe Bloggs, white collar, who comes in to do boxing. You know, your footballers of today do boxing and kickboxing and so on. Not everyone's going to become a fighter. Why? But why do they do it? Because there's a certain element to the fight game that makes you feel fucking alive.
You're so spot on with that Fight Fit Challenge analysis because I remember someone said to me before I did, they were like, I was toing and froing as to whether I was going to sign up or not. And then they said to me, mate, it'll change your life. And then I was going to sign up with Bash, and Bash literally made me just sign up for it. And it was the best thing I ever did because I didn't understand and I couldn't fathom what it was like to push yourself past your thresholds or your perceived thresholds like I did during the Fight Fit Challenge. My energy was so much better. My fitness was better than I could have ever imagined. My relationships, my general happiness and mental health, my self-confidence and belief just skyrocketed after that. So you're spot on about making a champion person because when you take somebody out of their comfort zone like that, it just builds character like you wouldn't believe.
And it doesn't come overnight. Again, I'm going to say this. You know, there's yourselves. There's even the Wimp to Warrior, for argument's sake, what they do and so on. It's not about them creating, you know, same with you guys, not about them creating world champion fighters. It's about creating world champion people. It's about getting someone, the average Joe Bloggs, you know, who's home cooking and looking after kids, getting involved into something it's like walking on a tightrope without a fucking net. You know, it's testifying, yeah, in that aspect. But you're getting the best out of that individual. And I'm so amazed and I'm so proud of people that actually take that step, you know, and knowing that they've got good trainers around them. They're not going to be just thrown into the, you know, lion's den. but they challenge themselves. How beautiful is it every day getting it up, knowing, you're going to challenge yourself. And then true to the word that, their biggest opponent isn't the opponent they're going to face that day. It's themselves.
Spot on.
Your fight is from when you start that journey. Your fight isn't the finish is the easy bit. It's all the segments leading up to it. That's really what your fight is. You know why? Because you don't get up at 8 o'clock, to go training. No, you got to get up at 5. Your meals change, your sleep pattern change. So you've got to resort your life around kids, family, whatever. You're not doing it full time, but you've got to resort that.
No, man, you do. It's a big commitment.
That's a challenge within itself. And this is why I take off my hat to people that actually challenge themselves. And what you guys have got going is phenomenal. I'd advise anyone, whether you're a mother, whether you're a father, whether you're an older generation, to try it. It's self-challenging at the end of the day.
I've not met someone who's regretted it. That's for sure.
Nor have I. And I speak to a lot of people, and people often say, I want to challenge myself. And okay, what do you do with yourself? Oh, I need to do this and this. So they work within their comfort zone. For them challenging themselves, rather than doing a 3-kilometre run at 10K an hour, they're doing it at 12K. That's their challenge. And I'm saying, no, I'm going to pull the rug from under you. I want to see how you react. And if you need your hand, I'm here. I'm not going to leave you high and dry. I'm here. And that's why I like all this stuff. It's created beasts out of normal people. But I mean beasts in terms of now all of a sudden they're walking with their chest out, chin up,
right,
and they feel good about themselves. Right? But they haven't got the six-pack and they haven't got all that social media or whatever it is does. They're just normal people, but they feel good about themselves. How fucking great is that?
Is a gratitude that comes from within as well.
Exactly.
When you have that fight on the night, you're absolutely shitting yourself, but after it, you're like, fuck, I did it.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. I committed to the 8 weeks, and now I feel like the next challenge is, I can do the next challenge. And yeah, it's a really beautiful feeling. And it's obviously something that you would have felt many times throughout your career. I mean, we would literally be here all day and night if we tried to cover it. We're talking movies, your K1, your training, your fighting, the coaching that you've done. If you could think of one time in your fighting career, another really pivotal moment for yourself, or another really pivotal fight, what would you sort of put the spotlight on that really sort of defined you as a character or as a fighter?
Okay, and this probably come across as negative for those who listened to it the first time, but there's so much positiveness in this. When I left Australia, I mean, everyone knew Stan the Man, and it was, hey, he was the guy flying the flag and everything else. Now, I've come from a full contact karate background, bare knuckle, no punches to the head, but you can kick a knee to the head and punch to the body, yeah? So I've stepped into the kickboxing world because I just, wanted to make a little bit of a name for myself because I was teaching kickboxing. And I thought, well, I'd be an idiot if I didn't actually compete in it while I'm teaching it. You got to walk the walk and talk the talk, yeah? I wasn't one of those textbook guys. So I put myself under, and let me tell you, I hated the head punches. I can't tell you how much I hated it. There was a time where I think I got hit that many times in the head that I ended up leaving my car in the car park in Brunswick and walking to the other side of Brunswick just with my bag, and I had tears coming out of my eyes thinking, why am I doing this? I used to question it.
Wow.
I used to question it. I literally did. And when I got home, my dad asked where my car was. I told him where it was. He goes, get in the car with me. He goes, we're going to pick it up.
I would never have picked you to...
Well, no, and that's what I'm saying. There's dark sides to us too that people don't see. People see the glitz and the glamour, the cups, the trophies, the hands up in the air, the money and everything else.
They don't see the tears.
They don't see the tears. They don't see the injuries. That's a stuff that I'd say they're going to make you or break you, depending how you absorb it. And I went through all that, and then when I wanted to make a name for myself, through the kickboxing world, I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I remember having my first fight here. I fought a New Zealand champion. I ended up knocking him out with a Superman punch, one of the first Superman punches here in Australia. And I thought, wow, this is fantastic, my first kickboxing fight. But what I found at that particular time, I'm not embarrassed to say it, where I was training with Dana Goodson under the stand camp and everything else, but I felt that I felt that I was riding under his wing and I never was going to be let out, But I thought, you know what, it's probably just my imagination and everything else. And I just learnt as much as I could through that, yeah? And there come a point in my life that we had a bit of a disagreement, and I thought, you know what, I've got nothing to prove in Australia. I'm going to go overseas. Let him have the limelight here. I'm going to go overseas. If I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it against the biggest guys in the world. And sure enough, I went to Saito Kaikan, which was the backbone of K1 at the time. Saito Kaikan was formed by Kazuyoshi Ishii, the founder of K1, who used to be a student of Masoyama in Kyokushin. They invited me over. Now, I went over and did my apprenticeship there. Now, I lied to my parents. They thought I was in a hotel. I was in no hotel. I was in dormitories, in a 20-room dormitory with another 19 other guys. We had two toilets, not Western toilets, Japanese-type toilets on the ground, and 2 showers. Absolutely fucking putrid. You wouldn't let your worst enemy live in there, right? We'd train. I'd literally wear, if I didn't have my thongs, I'd have to wear my runners to shower, right? And you'd squat down to go to the toilet and everything else. And if you had corkies, you fucking no hope of getting back up. But anyway, I went through that. My mum used to say to me, send me photos. And I'd never send her a photo of where I was staying, of training and all that. Yes, I did. And it took me 12 months to make a name for myself. I ended up fighting in the in 1994 in the World Cup, 64-man eliminator. I think it was 5 fights for the day I had. And ended up knocking virtually everyone out, winning the world title. At that particular time, literally the day after, the big boss of K1 and Saito Kaikan knocked on my door and says, mate, I want to see you in the office. I went in the office. He says, you no longer will be in here. We're going to put you up in your own room in a hotel. And I thought, I thought it was only for a short time. But they could probably see something in me that I did at the particular time. And my life started to roll then. You know, and I started to send pictures to my mum where I was staying and everything else at that particular time. But I had to partly fund myself, and I borrowed some money off friends to get there. It wasn't easy. It was hard. And I left Australia to stand, for argument's sake. That was hard within it. That was hard within itself. And I fought. And then I started fighting. They said to me from karate, they said, we want you to fight in K1. And I thought, wow, okay, what am I doing here? You know, so they offered me a fight against Masaki Satake, who at that time was the world champion, Japanese world champion, biggest star over there, had his own TV show, had his own dolls and everything else. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but what I did have, I had the courage to take him on. I thought, to be the best, I'm going to have to take on the best. And the Japanese underestimated me. So we went over and I ended up knocking him out in the second round, compressing his orbital, his eye socket, and virtually retired him. And at that particular time, if anyone gets to see that fight against Masaki Tataki, which was my first K1 fight.
It's on YouTube.
It'll be on YouTube. If they show the crowd, because I've got it on video, they show the crowd's
100,000?
literally in awe of just about what's happened. The promoter's like, what the hell? People are crying, screaming at Sataki. And here I am, I've just taken out one of their best. But what was going to spiral from there was just amazing. I mean, they took me in, the Japanese, and says, oh, you're a tough boy, you've got, karate spirit. So it was all about karate spirit. That's the way they embedded it. That's the way they got me in and reeled me in. But I didn't care then. I thought, you know what, I've just got to take it for what it is. And my next fight, my second fight over there was Peter Ertz. I didn't even know who Peter Ertz was.
Really?
No, at that particular time, because I was too busy worrying karate. I just started to work out who he was. And I ended up going the distance with him.
Your second fight?
My second fight was Peter Ertz, but they spiraled all the big guns. But it's that fight there that I got beaten. I got dropped 3 times in that fight with body shots. But I learned so much from that fight, and I knew what not to do. And I had to improve my boxing, by mega magnitude. I just really had to improve my hands and everything else. But Peter Ertz himself that particular day said, even with lack of experience, Sam Greco is one of the hardest guys to fight, of which I ended up fighting him again later on. But from there, they just scaled. I went from Peter Ertz to Ernesto Hoos to Jerome Labana to Mike Bernardo to Andy Hug. Not once, not twice, sometimes 3 times I fought him, But
the biggest names.
The biggest names. They will never have that era again, full stop,
just the fact you fought
it
all
wasn't
those
about
guys.
being, showboatish. It was hardcore. It was hardcore. You'd be friends. You'd be eating together now, but you'd be fighting again tomorrow. And the Japanese crowds would absolutely just pour in. It didn't matter. The press conferences were press conferences. They weren't this whole friggin' show, you know, fuck you. And there was none of that,
Right.
you know. Words were far and few. If you said you're going to knock someone out, you had to back it up. That was it. You know, you'd really never bag anyone during that time because we knew we were the elite, you know. And they'd keep bringing in new people from around the world. We just kept boom, 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 knocking them out. So there's probably 10 to 12 hardcore guys, and I was very fortunate to be one of them, you know, being part of that family.
Well, your record speaks volumes of that as well.
Yeah, look,
Phenomenal record.
People forget, you know, I've had about 96 full contact karate fights, and plus my kickboxing fights and the MMA fights, and you know, I don't even have my wrestling ones in there, pro wrestling, but 147 all up with I think 132 wins or something.
Yeah.
But look, irrespective, you know, it wasn't always the fight that I won that taught me a lesson. Sometimes it was the fights that I lost that taught me the lesson because I knew I gave it everything, but I just had to improve.
You say Peter Ertz would be one of those moments?
Oh, Peter Ertz. Ernesto Hoost. And when I ended up beating Ernesto Hoost, he's a guy that actually turns around. In some of his interviews, I just heard him recently too, they asked who has been his toughest opponent, and he mentions me. I was just awkward for him. But I used to work a lot on timing. You know, I think sometimes I overanalyze fighters. I just break things down. You know, I used to watch their fights and write down their strengths and weaknesses, and then I used to write what their timing was like and how many steps they'd take forward to come back. And so I used to break it probably too far, but the truth of the matter is that's what helped me beat these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the science behind, you know, working. In today's world, we've got so much of that happening, you know.
Because that is genuinely, that is like trailblazing sort of stuff for your time, you know. Today, because the sport is so commercially available and so consumed, you've got every man and their dog who does some sort of martial arts. Who would you say over the history of that you've seen, kickboxing, MMA, whatever, who are the best fighters that you would say, if you had to name one or two?
Look, when I look at the best fighters, it's not just about technical. It's not about technically. I think just as people themselves. My late friend Andy Hug became a K1 champion, but just heart and soul every day, every single day. He'd be living it. He'd be living that life. You know, constant training all the time. You know, in that era, Peter Ertz and Ernesto Hoost. For me to say there wasn't any in that top group, they all stand out because they all offered something different.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's the same with MMA and UFC, you know. They're not just top fighters, but they have something different to offer. You know, I look at fights differently. I don't look at fights, you know, oh yeah, he won, he lost. I look at it and till this very day, I break it down. I love watching the way they do a particular technique, timing and everything else. And then I rehearse it and I go back and I get my guys to do it or I do it, whichever it may be. There's a lot to learn from these guys, you know. So I give credit where credit is due. I think that to me, let's say a handful. The handful could be, you know, a dozen guys, you know.
Yeah.
But those guys in K1, Ray Sefu and all those guys, hey, they got so much to offer. And you look at them now; they're teaching. They've got fighters coming through the ranks. Peter Ertz has got fighters. Ernesto Hoost, Ray Sefu. You know, Ray Sefu is running also PFL.
Do you have much to do with John Wayne Parr?
Yeah, I do have a little bit to do with John Wayne Parr. There's a guy that absolutely phenomenal, great kid. I just love his wisdom. I just love his aura, something about him. He's constantly happy, constantly happy, but one of the most dangerous motherfuckers around. Yeah.
Did you see that video the other day that was going around? If one of his friends that he trains with was diagnosed with cancer, and
yeah, I saw a clip of it. Yes, I did.
And then they were raised money on a GoFundMe, and John Wayne Parr took a video of his friends, and his friend was quite emotional. He's a very tough guy, his mate, and it was just awesome, man. Just awesome the way that the MMA community got around his friend.
Johnny is a remarkable individual. He has a lot to offer the sport. I think what he's doing to this very day, I mean, he's pushing the boundaries, but I think as long as he's healthy, good on you, son. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You know, he's desperate for this 100th win, and sometimes chasing that heavily can cost you. but I hope it doesn't because he deserves it.
Man, I hope he gets
He's
that
fighting
one more win.
Mundine. Do I think he can beat Mundine? I think John can beat anyone, to be quite honest.
Yep.
On a good day, he can beat anyone. Do I think Mundine can beat him? Look, I'm not a massive rap for Mundine, but hey, good luck to him. But I'll bat for my mate and barrack for my mate, John Wayne Parr.
Me too, man. I've got John Wayne Parr all day. I really hope he gets up.
You want to talk about guts and balls, John Wayne Parr's the man.
Have you ever seen his documentary, Bred with Venom?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Fucking good documentary, dude.
Yeah, it is. It was put together really well. It shows that hardship too. And that's what I was trying to tell you before. Not many people see that,
Exactly. Going to Thailand as a youngster and being the only white guy there and learning the language and embedding himself in the culture.
Your average person will sit down and watch a fight and you get your arm raised and they go, geez, he was lucky, or hey, that was easy. Yeah, easy bullshit. There's nothing easy in the fight game. You still, the easiest thing, people say, what's the hardest thing about fighting? I said, training. Simple. Training's the hardest thing. There's no other harder thing than training. The fight's easy.
Fun.
The fight's easy. Jimmy Crute, if he was sitting here right now and you asked him, what does Sam normally say pre-fight? Exactly what Paul Fifield used to say to me. He says, mate, we've done all our hard work. Give me a whole spiel. Then he'd look at me and say, mate, go out and enjoy yourself. You know why he says that? Because I used to fight best when I used to enjoy myself. Jimmy Crute, when he's relaxed and fights best, you won't get next to him.
Wow.
And that's the truth. That is the truth.
What are his biggest strengths?
His biggest strength, like I said, he's got balls as big as a Grand Canyon. That's number one. Number two, he's got some beautiful technique. He really has. He's come a long way over the last 5 years. His mental drive to succeed, you really can't top it. He will not give up, He'll just go. Just being the beautiful human that he is, his dedication to training. They're all the strengths that I look at, because it make him who he is. So I can, as a coach, I can work with all those things.
And what's next for Jimmy? Because he's just had that fight. He lost to Misha Serkinov, who was ranked 15th in the light heavyweight division.
Yeah.
He was definitely winning that fight at one point. Could have finished it.
He was, and I'm going to call a spade a spade. Did Misha win the fight? Of course he won the fight, but Jimmy lost the fight.
Right.
Misha didn't really win it. Jimmy, I know Jimmy very, very well, and I'm gonna lay the sword on the table and say this to people. I just hope people out there don't see it as, oh, Jimmy, you stepped up to the plate and now you lost. Go back to where you belong. No, you got to give the kid. There's admiration there, and you got to applaud the fact that he's taken on one of the top 15 in the world. He's not selective. From day one, he came to me 5 years ago. He says, I want hard fight, Sam. I want to know where I stand. And that's all he was going to get from me, yeah? He doesn't want easy fights. We took the Misha fight on the basis that I was still going across. Now, remember, we just spoke about medically that I was down and out. So the general's out now. So I had to fill that place. Now, his jiu-jitsu coach, who we grew up with for many, many years, 20 years, whatever, back surgery at the same time. So he's out. Can't fly. I can't fly. So here's this kid who's gone over. We had a head coach and a ground coach. So during that time, even when I was down and out, I've had to send him over to Rob Whittaker's camp for 4 to 5 weeks, just to take him out of his comfort zone here because he was getting to be comfortable, just to bring him back up again, which worked a treat. Did Jimmy do all the work leading into this fight? Hell yeah, he did that and a lot more. So I was proud of him.
He's working with Hammer as well.
He's worked with Hammer also. So, and that was, I thank these guys. And if you're a good person, trust me, and I like to think I'm a good person, I've got a great relationship with people.
Must be hard. Must be like giving your baby to someone.
Yeah, it is. But you've got to do it. You've got to do it in full confidence. I'd never did it thinking, am I going to lose him? No, I know Jimmy well enough. He's a very, 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 very loyal, family-orientated person, and there's no buts or ifs. Full stop. Awesome. And I did it in full confidence. I wanted the best for the kid. If I didn't think the kid could do this, I would never have taken the fight from the start. We had a game plan. We had it all set out. I'm thankful to Dan Kelly from Resilience and Steve Baldacchino. Those two guys filled in for us. One was doing the stand-up, one was doing the ground, and with Dan Kelly's UFC experience. And obviously Jimmy's dad was there for moral support and everything else, and they went over. Now, the rules were quite simple for Jimmy. But obviously I think with the hype and everything else, he knew exactly what to do, but then just didn't do it. He got caught in that moment, and when he got to the ground and he was on top position, rather than being heavy and slowing it down and picking your shots, he just went for broke, right? And the problem is what we didn't realise, or what people don't realise, is when he went for broke with his hands, he was allowing his base to come up, allowing Serkinov to escape out. He did it two or three times. But hey, it's all an experience.
Well, so he could have locked ground and pound,
if Jimmy is on top, and he knows to be top heavy, which he normally does. So the mistakes he made against Serkinov, he doesn't do that. That is the truth. He's one of the heaviest motherfuckers on the ground, and one of the slickest guys at light heavyweight. I promise you that. He's only 22, 23. Watch this kid in a few years.
Don't forget that he's 23.
Yeah,
23.
Don't forget. Yeah, and he came in very young. Don't forget the name Jimmy Crute. He's so slick that if he did what he normally does, he would have beaten Serkinov in the first round. No doubt about it. I have no doubt. And I'm not pissing in your pocket. I call a spade a spade. But the fact that he didn't follow that plan and he got a bit overexcited, blah, 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 not having his guys there, I think it took its toll. And Jimmy beat Jimmy that day by giving up positions, and then got caught in an amazing choke, And he said to me to this very day, he says, mate, perhaps I should have went out. And I said, that's okay, Jimmy. You didn't have to go out. You tapped. There was nowhere for you to go. He was caught very, very tight in that. Doesn't make you a better person by going out. You acknowledge the fact, and that was it,
He'll learn from this,
He's 10-1.
He'll learn from this.
He's 10-1. It's not the end of the world. It's the beginning.
Right.
Yeah. When I look back today, one of the first things I said to Jimmy when we had a meeting the other day, we went through the whole fight, and I said, we won't talk about this ever again. But son, I'm going to tell you, this was the best thing that ever happened to you. Some people take a step back and why are you saying that? It's the best thing. What it did, it actually made Jimmy realise what not to do anymore. And that he needs to improve and where to improve. Along with, I exactly know what it is. We're right now putting a game plan together for his training again. We've got, different strength conditioning coaches. We've got sports psychologists. Everyone's coming together now. We're fixing this small issue to make him grow to be a braver and better man,
Right.
But
we might see him again soon?
We're hoping by the end of the year you might see him. Could be Vegas, could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Could be anywhere.
He's so popular, and in Australia now he's really building a big fan base, and especially with his all guns blazing sort of approach, his striking's beautiful. His ground game, we haven't seen it properly yet, but I'm sure it's fantastic as well.
He's one slick guy. Like I said, I think if you can grasp that internal belief, he's going to be totally unstoppable. Yeah. You can mark my words on this podcast right now. Yeah. He's just an amazing individual. And I'll tell you something, if I've got Jimmy in camp, I've got Kim Baldacchino.
She's done very well at the
Kim
moment.
Baldacchino, I've got Sean Gauchi and a few others in there. But those guys alone, they're so dedicated. I've got a girl, Kim Baldacchino, who travels 2.5 hours to training from Tarolgan and 2.5 hours back.
Oh, man.
3 days a week. Come on, man. You kidding me? There's a girl who's fully dedicated, and she gets there and always wants to do more. And sometimes you have to reel them back. Same with Jimmy. Jimmy would come from Bendigo, and until I said, look, mate, if you're going to be a professional, you're going to have to come back here. I can't. You're never going to get those 4 hours back in your life.
Right.
Every day. So he's starting to see that. He's starting to see the side of professionalism now.
It's amazing to see from your perspective all about Jimmy as a fighter, and I'm sure that Aussie fight fans would just love to hear this stuff. But I mean, Jimmy says that he looks like Jordan De Goey, so I'm sure he's got a big enough head already. They both got big heads.
Yeah, I think he wish he was Jordan De Goey.
We won't give him any bigger head if he looks anything like Geordie.
No, Jordy's a good man.
He is. So Ben Sassoli as well. He's another very interesting one because he came through the Ultimate Fighter. He's got hands like fucking steel. He's got knockout power like you wouldn't believe. He was unlucky that he got wrestled by Juan Espino in that Ultimate Fighter house, who went on to win the whole competition. Yeah. Went back to Hex, right? Won his fight.
Yep.
Dana White's Contender Series comes along and the bloke gives up after getting a little eye poke.
Yeah,
I made a cheeky comment about it before.
Exactly. Funny you say that. I'm just for those viewers listening to this. It's interesting, because when you have a look at the fight, irrespective of whether the guy didn't want to fight on, the rule of thumb is this in the fight game: is protect yourself at all times. Now, he might have copped a poke in the eye. I don't know how severe it was. I don't think it was, but anyway. But I think Ben's got a really kind and good heart. As big as he is and hits like an MF, he just waited off and the referee just stood back. And I just said to Ben when he got back, I said, what the fuck are you doing? Jump on him. Unless the referee pulls you off, you do not get off him. It's dog eat dog out here. And he's realised what I've just said. Have a look at some of my fights. I catch the guy and the guy might turn around and do this. But if the referee's not there, I'll keep going. I don't care who you are.
So you think that he should have just finished that right then and there?
I think had he jumped back on him and closed it off straight away, they would have given him the victory.
And the contract. They wanted him in the UFC. You can tell they gave him that chance. And now he's fighting Greg Hardy.
Well, now he's got a contract.
What? Is it a one-fight contract?
No, he's got a contract.
Awesome.
He's got a contract. So they've given him a guy who's probably not well liked in the industry.
Not at all,
Greg Hardy, for what he's done outside the cage. Do I think he's a great, marketing tool? No, I don't think at all. I think he's disgraceful for what MMA is about and everything else. But I think he puts bums on seats.
He does.
He puts bums on seats, and
people want to see him fight. People want to see him get bashed.
Yeah, people want to see him get bashed or want to see him win. Either or, you're going to sit down. It still makes you popular.
Mate,
Conor McGregor was the same.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor was the same. Anthony Mundine was the same. They're all of them. They're guys that are controversial, and they put bums on seats, and that's what makes you popular. And now Benny's got an opportunity. I was with him today. We did some work this morning. He's going through some hard times too.
Right.
Through some personal issues with a very close friend of his. But he contained himself today and he trained really, really well. I think it'll be a great fight. I think it's going to be a very, very hard fight. I can tell you straight up, Greg Hardy's going to come straight at him like he does. There's nothing technical about Greg Hardy, but he's there to work. He punches like a motherfucker really, really hard and loves backing people up against the cage. Don't underestimate his knee and his uppercuts. The moment you curl up, he's just going to go you. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He doesn't. I don't think he actually picks his shots. He just throws them.
Right.
But he hits very, very, very hard. So he can't be underestimated.
How can Ben sort of mitigate that?
Oh, look, he mitigated by
away too much.
The old saying is you can't hit what's not there. And I don't mean to not turn up. I mean be there. You feed him something, but make him miss, make him pay. And even watching Benny today and over the years working with him, he's a kid that he's naturally talented.
Right.
He's naturally talented, but he's got to push himself to do it.
He's got that power as well.
Yeah. He's got awesome power, but you can't rely on power.
Whenever I watch Ben, sorry to cut you off there, but whenever I watch Ben, I always see him in this sort of Taekwondo stance. Does he have a Taekwondo background?
No, he doesn't. No, I don't think he has Taekwondo. Not that I know of, but he sits off. He's a Southie. He's a southpaw, but he sits very. Yeah, I know what you're saying, and his backhand's really further back. I would have liked to see it a bit, up and further forward. But I think it comes through. It comes in training. He moves around with guys that he's got to lighten his punches with, because otherwise they won't be staying there.
Right.
And it's created a demon in him. And I just said to him, "You can't afford to do that, man. We've got to." This is over the years I've been talking. So the moment he fights a guy that he can land on, you can see his stance change straight away. Yeah. So I know what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. But I mean, even today, I watched him. He did 8, 10. what did he do, 10 rounds today. He really pushed it today. He got when I say knocked down, didn't get knocked down. At the end of the round, he just fucking fall down because he's just tired. Bang, minute later, get back up, we're going again. He's got a big fight on his hands. That's it.
Massive.
They're giving you an opportunity. In life, you're going to get that one opportunity. If you put on a poor performance, they can take your contract straight off you.
I don't think he will, though. He's an entertaining fighter.
He is. He's an entertaining fighter. When Ben brings the best Ben there, you've got a great fight. He's fighting a guy who's 6'5", orthodox, loves travelling in straight lines, doesn't like being put on the back foot, has his chin up high. Can Ben tag that chin? Hell yeah. But, suggestive to go to the body too. You've got a soft midsection.
Right.
So obviously this won't be aired to them. But, like I said, I've got a lot of time for Benny. He's fighting a lot of battles at the moment.
Yep.
And I'm just proud of the kid that he's sticking it out.
Well, I couldn't think of anyone better to be in his corner than yourself. So
yeah.
So another person I've got coming on the podcast soon is Michelle Reeves, who I know that you know.
Absolutely legend, nutritionist, holistic nutritionist.
And
absolute
I spoke to her for the first time on the phone last night, and basically the premise of what she does is she'll bring you in, do your skin folds, get all your measurements, and then give you an exact diet. You'll log it all down, and you'll call her up, and she'll call you every week and see how you're going. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I was saying to her, I saw that you were doing Jimmy Crutes, and I know that you know Sam Greco as well. And I was like, what the fuck have you been feeding Ben Sassoli?
Yeah. I don't even know if Benny's with her.
No, he's not.
I don't think Benny's with her, but she's done amazing things. She's locked horns with George Lockhart, Lockhart and Leith, who run pretty much probably 85% of the UFC, or 80%. She's done amazing things, and just the process of her being where she is today, the amount of learning she's done. And if anyone thinks, this sort of puts things in perspective, getting ready for a fight isn't just about the punching and the kicking. Again, I'm going to say there's a psychology part of it, there's a nutrition side. If you're going to worry about the week of the fight or leading into the fight, losing that weight and saying, look, I can't do extra cardio because I'm just flat or whatever, then we've got some issues. It's amazing. I've seen it work with guys firsthand, and the guys are actually eating more and losing weight. The average person sitting there listening to this, they'll think, how the hell do you eat
just
more?
eating the right things,
eating the right foods, resting right, training right. It's all got to work together. It's all interlinked. It's all got to come together. If it doesn't come together and you're doing sporadic stuff, it's not going to work. Stress plays a big factor with you holding weight.
Right.
Drinking more water, you'd think, but then when they reduce the water on you, you'll find that your weight just drops off, And then they've got specialty things at the end to tweak it. Jimmy's amazing. Jimmy will walk around at 102 kilos. He's probably on a couple more beers when he's 104, but he fights at 93 and at 205. And here's a kid that comes in fight week at 100 kilo. Fight week. So he's got 6-7 kilo to lose. He doesn't.
Insane.
He doesn't. It's the way it's done. And they aren't dehydrated. They're not low on energy. They're full of beans. They're rehydrated, and they're ready to go. And then when they make weight, there's this hydration process that they go through. That Michelle puts them through. It's amazing.
And she's also accessible to just everyone as well. Not even just fighters.
Michelle and I go back 20, 30 years. I've known her for a hell of a long time. Besides being a beautiful person, she just knows her stuff. And I remember when she was getting involved with the fight guys, we got talking, and I thought, this is what the fight game needs. There's people out there that fight that actually need nutrition or nutritional advice but don't want to spend money. I say, first and foremost, you want to be good at something, it's what we call self-investment. You've got to invest in yourself. And part of that is this. You are what you eat.
Right.
Simple. She'll tell you that. But there's so many intricate things that they know about that we don't. I always say, to people, and my manager used to say to me all the time, he goes, Sam, do what you're good at and pay people what you're bad at, and you'll never go wrong. And words of wisdom. And I just say for any fighter out there, or just housewife or husband or whoever you are, if you're interested in well-being, man, get hold of Michelle. She's really, really cool. Tell them I sent you. She's absolutely phenomenal. I can't praise her enough. I got people, actually today I had a meeting this morning. I've got 2 people living dancers that live in Hong Kong, and I've just put on to them. So they're going to correspond via email and FaceTime and everything else and do her stuff. She does that also. So
awesome,
you've never left in the dark. And I cannot stress how important nutrition is for general health, let alone fighting in a professional sport, whatever.
Yeah, of course, man.
I cannot tell you.
I literally can't wait to get her on the podcast as well, to just be able to show everybody who listens to this as well about all of like the awesome benefits of nutrition, and just pick her brains a little bit, and then also document my fight camp journey as well over 10 weeks and see how much of an improvement I can make, because I know that I'll stick to it, once I have a goal in mind. So yeah, I can't wait to get her on the podcast and that journey as well.
One of the greatest things I found with my fighters, Sean Gouch was a prime example in his last fight, winning by KO. Irrespective of that, he didn't use Michelle the fight prior, and he used her for this fight. He was leaner, came in heavier fight week, didn't have to worry about the stress of, I've got to lose the weight. He was told the way it was going to be done. It fell into place. Mentally, he was sharp. He wasn't dehydrated or anything. And he felt the best he ever felt. And one of the key elements was, he said to me, because I felt so good, I could actually hear you clearly in the corner. So clear, crystal clear. So that's what I say to these people, for those listening, it's a combination of all these things. You need to get all these things right in order for you to be successful, just in life in general. Food can make or break you. With the stuff that goes in our food these days, there's a lot of shit out there. I wish they'd turn the tables around and make junk food expensive,
right,
and make good food cheaper. I think we'd live better off, wouldn't we?
We'd live longer as well.
How ironic is it? You want to eat well and be healthy and clean, and it costs you a hell of a lot more than eating junk.
Well, this is something I'm really looking forward to, like just improving my relationship with food and understanding nutrition better and what's best for me. But, mate, we're going on to an hour and 15 here.
Oh God!
I have to get your prediction before you go for Rob Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya and also Volkanovski versus Holloway before you go, if possible.
No problem. Well, look, we've got the UFC in next week, and Rob Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya. Look, both are very, very talented fighters. Take nothing away from either one of them. Honestly, people say there's going to be a knockout. I don't feel there's going to be. I think it'll go the distance. I really feel it's going to go the distance. But I think Rob Whittaker will take it. Rob is such a technical guy. But I mean super technical. And the thing he's got going for him, his timing is impeccable. Absolutely impeccable. Israel Adesanya is just a freak of nature. He can pull techniques from anywhere. And you saw that against Silva, because they both sort of looked like they were simulating each other.
I wish that was a
But then when he fought
fight.
Gaslam, it was different,
Yeah.
And take nothing away from Adesanya. I absolutely admire the kid for what he's doing. Absolutely admire. But I think Rob Whittaker probably will have the edge at the end. Hey, may the best man win in that one there. As for Holloway and Volkanovski, I admire them both. Volkanovski, they're both, he's a personal friend of mine. I think what Volkanovski has shown in his last couple of fights, he's just like a bull terrier. The guy does not stop. He's got a fuel tank that's never ending.
He seems to be mentally very strong as well.
Very, very strong, and he's relentless. If he takes you down and you're thinking of getting back up or whatever, or vice versa, he's so relentless. He's back on his feet or he takes you down. He doesn't care. And he's not afraid to trade. And he's very calculated in what he does. Here's a guy, I don't know whether you saw it, Volkanovski, when he was playing rugby,
he
was 92 kilo.
Crazy,
92 kilo.
Now he's fighting 145.
145, are you kidding me?
He was he was the same weight as what Jim is fighting at.
Jimmy's a fat fuck. Don't worry about Jimmy. No. So I had this chat with Volkanovski, and when he showed me the picture, I said, no, that's been photoshopped. He goes, no, that was me. And to see his transition and where he is today, diets, nutrition's a key element for him there. That just goes to show. Most of those top guys have all got nutritionists. They do. They have to have them.
Yeah, you have to, man. Just for the weight cut.
You've got to let the experts do their work. It just takes the pressure off you. You do what you're good at, pay what you're bad at.
Right.
So I say Volkanovski. I say Whittaker distance, win on decision.
You think decision again?
Yeah. No, and Volkanovski, 3rd round.
Well, mate, I can't even say how grateful I am for you coming here today.
It was an absolute pleasure.
Mate, I'm speechless, honestly. It's been so cool. If you want to tell everybody where they can find you on
by all means. Well,
social media.
first of all, I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity.
No,
Look,
thank you.
I hope you guys have, of all the things I've said, if you can take one thing away and just make it work for you, I know I've done my job, and that's what it's about. It's not about being a world champion fighter or anything else. It's about passing on my knowledge and experience to you guys out there. And if you want to find me, guys, follow me at Sam Greco K1 on Instagram and also on Twitter. And also go to www.samgreco.com.au and have a look at my I'm a Fighter campaign. Just have a read up on what I do and so on. And if there's any questions, just shoot me off an email or a text, whichever it may be.
Yep.
But other than that, I just hope you found this informative to whatever degree. And hope you've taken something away from it, and good luck to everyone.
And if you guys want to ever go for a nice feed, Don Camillo Cafe
in East Melbourne.
And there you go, mate, Sammy.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. Can't wait to get you on again.
Good on you. Take
Cheers,
care.
Guys. Thank
See
you.
you guys.